The best movies about Battle of Britain weren't made in America. They were shot in post-war airfields with real Hurricanes and Spitfires, sometimes by the men who actually flew them. One had a Royal Air Force pilot crash a camera plane mid-shoot, and another was so realistic they called in a Nazi ace to help direct it. If you've never seen it, this is the story of Douglas Bader, one of the Royal Air Force's most famous aces, played by Kenneth More. Bader lost both legs in a flying accident before the war back in 1931. Instead of giving up, he fought to walk again on artificial legs, then to fly, and finally led a Hurricane squadron into combat during the Battle of Britain. The movie shows his rehab, his battles with Royal Air Force brass, and his big wing tactics. Most of it really happened. They do soften him up a bit for the screen. Bader in real life had quite a temper and there was a lot of swearing involved. But the basics are there. What sets this film apart is how close it was made to the real events. Just 15 years after the war, with real World War II Hurricanes and Spitfires on camera. They borrowed aircraft from the Royal Air Force and museums and put together a small fleet of Spitfire Mark 16s, visually almost identical to wartime models. They also had at least one airworthy Hurricane for those taxi and takeoff scenes. The film was a massive hit in Britain, topped the box office in 1956, even won the BAFTA for Best British Film. That's like British Oscar. This one is a true story most people outside aviation circles have never heard. Franz von Wera was the only Axis pilot to escape British captivity and make it back to Germany. The movie starts with von Wera getting shot down over England in 1940. Captured, he spends the rest of the film plotting one escape after another, jumping off a prison train, faking his way through British airfields as a Dutch pilot, even trying to steal a plane outright. He finally gets shipped to a camp in Canada, slips out, and makes it across the frozen St. Lawrence River to the U.S., which was still neutral at the time. The movie sticks very close to what really happened. There are historically accurate details like von Wera building a replica cockpit in prison to practice for his escape. Hardy Kruger plays von Wera, and he actually served in the Luftwaffe, so there's another bit of authenticity to the part. The aerial scenes use the right aircraft. Hawker Hurricanes shoot down von Wera just as in real life, and for ground shots, the filmmakers track down one of the last flying Hurricane 2Cs. Just a tight, suspenseful escape movie with a pulse-pounding climax. Dangerous Moonlight tells the story of a Polish pianist, Stefan, who escapes Warsaw and joins the Royal Air Force to fight the Germans. The plot mixes romance and war. Stefan marries an American reporter and ends up flying combat, finishing with a self-sacrifice in a dogfight. Most of the dramatic stuff is fiction, especially the ending and his amnesia subplot. But the core idea is real. Polish pilots were indeed some of the best in the Battle of Britain, and the film tries to show what those men gave up to fight. What people really remember is the Warsaw Concert, a piece written for the film that became a hit on its own. The flying scenes mix real aircraft, models, and stock footage. Wartime shortages meant they had to get creative, but the dogfights still work. It's more sentimental drama than pure action, and American distributors even cut the film to speed up the pacing. But for its time, it brought attention to pilots who rarely got the spotlight. This one is something different, a Hollywood take released just months before America joined the war. Tyrone Power plays Tim, an American pilot ferrying bombers to England who volunteers for the Royal Air Force, all while chasing his old flame, played by Betty Grable. This movie isn't about accuracy, of course. The timeline mashes together Dunkirk and the Battle of Britain, and the tone is part romance, part adventure. But the movie puts in real effort with the flying scenes. They used actual period aircraft, North American Harvards and Lockheed Hudsons, among others. And also the movie combines model work with flight footage. The recreation of Dunkirk was ambitious enough that some of those shots actually ended up in later documentaries. And they pushed for authenticity so hard on set it actually ended pretty badly. 2 cinematographers died when a hurricane and a camera plane collided in midair. The movie earned an Oscar nomination for its special effects, and for a propaganda piece, the aerial sequences are surprisingly strong. The first of the few is about R.J. Mitchell, the man who designed the Spitfire. Leslie Howard directed, produced, and stars as Mitchell. The movie focuses on how he watched German rearmament and then dedicated himself to building Britain's best fighter, even as his health declined. The movie gets a lot right. It covers Mitchell's record-breaking seaplanes and his push to build the Spitfire. They even included cameos from real Royal Air Force pilots who'd fought in the Battle of Britain. There's dramatic license, of course. Mitchell's death is played as the result of overwork, when it was really cancer. And there's a made-up scene with German designer Willy Messerschmitt that never happened. But the real gem here is the flying footage. The filmmakers included actual shots of Mitchell's Schneider trophy-winning planes. They even had Jeffrey Quill, the Royal Air Force test pilot, fly a real Spitfire Mark II for the big test scene. It's a piece of wartime propaganda, sure, but it's also a tight little movie with real aircraft and real heroes in front of the camera. Released in 1942, right after the U.S. joined the war, this was Universal's idea of telling the story of American volunteers who flew for the Royal Air Force. Robert Stack plays one of 3 Americans in the Royal Air Force stationed in an all-American squadron. The plot mixes their friendships, love interests, and the air war over Britain. There's even a female pilot in the mix, played by Diana Barrymore. Eagle Squadron doesn't have much time for facts. It invents situations like women ferry pilots flying in combat and over-the-top hospital bombing scenes that never happened. The real Eagle Squadron veterans weren't impressed. Many felt the movie trivialized their experience, like they turned it into melodrama instead of showing what people actually went through. Technically, the filmmakers used the right Royal Air Force aircraft, Hurricanes and Spitfires, and even slipped in a real Messerschmitt Bf-109. But most aerial shots come from stock footage or studio effects. Actual combat newsreels are intercut with studio scenes to add some reality. But in the end, the movie cares more about soap opera plot lines than the war. That's quite a shame. If you want something closer to what it was actually like, there's Angels 1-5. Released in 1952, this was the first major British film about the Battle of Britain. The story follows T.B. Baird, a new Royal Air Force pilot who wrecks his Hurricane landing on day 1. He gets stuck working in the operations room, so you see both sides, the flying and the command side. The script is based on a book by Pelham Groom, a real Royal Air Force wing commander. He was also the movie's technical advisor, which is why so much of the detail rings true. They filmed some scenes at Royal Air Force Base Uxbridge, right in the actual underground command center from the real battle. The title, Angels 1-5, is genuine radio speak for 15,000 feet altitude. Throughout the film, the details like sector control rooms, radio chatter, the way ground controllers worked are accurate. The production had to make do with just a handful of real Hurricanes. They even borrowed some from Portugal, since by the 1950s almost none were left. Most dogfights are made with careful editing of stock combat film. Still, it looks and feels right for the time. Released for the 30th anniversary of the campaign, this film set out to be as authentic as possible. There's a huge international cast and focus on the entire battle, not just a single character. It covers everything: the fall of France, the German bombing campaign, the key turning points, and the inside view of both British and German command. What set this film apart was the scale. The producers built up what was basically the 35th largest air force in the world at the time. They hunted down and restored real Spitfires and Hurricanes, and for German bombers and fighters they used some Spanish-built aircraft. The aerial sequences use real planes flying real maneuvers, not models or effects, and it shows. These scenes are some of the best ever filmed. But getting them meant running over schedule and budget by a mile. Guy Hamilton directed, but they also brought in real Luftwaffe ace Adolf Galland as a military advisor. The result is a semi-documentary, massive in scope, that gets the details right and delivers some of the best big-screen dogfights you'll ever see. This Czech-British film tells the story of 2 Czech airmen who escaped Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia to fight with the Royal Air Force. It balances some personal drama like a love triangle and tragic loss with a real history of exiled pilots who joined the battle and proved themselves after some initial distrust from their British commanders. Units like No. 310 and No. 312 squadrons were real, and the film uses their actual stories as a base. The filmmakers went to great lengths to show authentic Spitfires, uniforms, and tactics. Money was tight here, so they used a mix of archival footage, scenes from the Battle of Britain movie, and some material from Memphis Belle. There's also some CGI to fill in the biggest dogfights. The result feels period correct and convincing enough. Hurricane tells the story of No. 303 Squadron, the Polish flyers who became legends in the Royal Air Force. These pilots had already survived invasions of Poland and France, then came to England to fight again. The movie follows their arrival, initial suspicion from British officers, and then their rise to become the highest-scoring squadron of the whole campaign. Filming this on a smaller budget meant relying on CGI for most of the dogfights. There's just a few full-scale Hurricane replicas and possible shots of the real thing for close-ups. The movie gets the shape and look of the aircraft right, and even if the CGI sometimes shows its limits, the story doesn't stray far from what actually happened. It's a straightforward, workmanlike film that does its best to honor the legacy of the Polish squadron.